Welcome, everybody. Thanks to everybody who's tuning in and staying with us in these strange and unprecedented times. Thank you to First Fridays, which continues to support Winnipeg's artistic community, and to Karen Schultz, who does so much behind the scenes. Thanks to our funders, Winnipeg Arts Council, the Manitoba Arts Council, and our sponsor, the Winnipeg Free Press. Thank you to Collective Broadcast Co. and Aaron Zagers, who's helping us with tech tonight. And a reminder that even if we're not in the Exchange District tonight, as we were in the old days, the Exchange District is still there, and it's got galleries and artists and arts organizations and indie stores and restaurants just doing their best. And so please check out the First Fridays website, Facebook page, just to keep up with what's happening. And you really do have to check because, of course, some more restrictions just came down at 6 p.m. So, and I want to say thanks especially to our guests tonight. Sandra Brown graduated from the UW with a BA and the art school at U of M with a BFA. She's a mixed media artist from Winnipeg. She loves to use humor and repurposed objects in work that is typically about gender relations, women's experiences, and mothering. She participates in local group exhibitions and co-facilitates the Artist Mothers group at Mentoring Artists for Women's Art, MAWA, in Winnipeg. And she's co-founder of the Creative Revival Company, which provides art-based workshops about the creative process for beginners. And then Larissa Pacholko graduated with a BFA honors from the University of Manitoba. Ceramics is her medium of choice. Clay connects her with earth and spirit, and the making process grounds her. She also includes discarded and found objects in her practice and makes functional ceramics as well. Her sculptures explore elements of nature and the body, often confronting issues of morality, power roles, patriarchy, and the objectification of women. And Larissa organized the Artist Mothers group show for 2021, and we're going to talk about all the challenges that involved in this very difficult year. And I'm Alison Gilmore, and I just want to say also to everyone who's listening, you can submit questions at any time through the chat function, and I will look out for them, okay? So the whole issue of artists, being an artist and being a mother, there's this idea, cultural idea, sort of trope that there's no more somber enemy of good art than the pram in the hall. And British artist Tracy Emin has this much quoted line. She said, "There are good artists that have children. Of course there are. They're called men," which, I don't think she's slagging off women. I think she's basically saying she's slagging off a system that makes it very hard for them to succeed. But obviously, that kind of quotation is not good for morale, So, I mean, mothering and art making have sort of been seen often as incompatible, at least, and I should say in the Western high art tradition. And, that there are a lot of other cultures that don't see these kind of binary oppositions at all. Indigenous cultures, don't categorize things this way. And I should say that, even when we're talking about parenting and art, fatherhood is generally not brought up. No one wonders, how did Picasso manage to make art when he had 4 children? Like, nobody has ever asked that question. But I think certainly there are men now who are trying to figure out, how to combine family life and art. But certainly in the past and continuing into the present, many women who've gone through art school in Canada, who are working in the current art system, who have children, they come up against a system that really can make it very difficult, very challenging for them to combine art making and motherhood. So, I mean, in general, I think we live in a culture that places a lot of pressure on mothers, kind of sentimentalizes the idea of motherhood, but doesn't give mothers a lot of support. And it doesn't always value art making either. So artist mothers kind of have a double whammy. So let's talk about how and why the group started at MAWA. So do you want to start, Sandra, and just tell us?
Yeah, well, in 2010, MAWA, they screened a film called Who Does She Think She Is by Pamela Tanner Bull is her name. And it was about mothers who struggled with art making. And after that film, MAWA really wanted if they could do something to help mentor mothers and help mothers. And so we started the group, and we weren't sure if it would work, if people were interested, but over time, women started coming, and they really wanted to chat about their experience. They really wanted to make things because they had absolutely no time to make anything. So can we just sit around and gather and make stuff and talk and what? And so that's what we did. And then we just slowly tried to figure out what is it that you need. What do you need to help keep your hand in your art practice? And so we just put together just different, we'd meet once a month, and we would, we'd have different challenges where, say, for instance, we do a 1-a-day challenge. Like for the month of October, everybody would try to make an artwork a day for a month. We'd talk about things like goal setting. We'd talk about things like daily practice. We'd have speakers sometimes. We'd have artists come in to give critiques of our work, and we just would collage and sit around and embroider and just chat. And then every year we'd have an exhibition, and we found that really helped people to reach a goal, right? To make something for the show. And so that was always really important. And also just like having that monthly place to come to show someone your work, just even if it was half finished, it still was really important to mothers to keep their hand in their art practice and keep their spirit up, Yeah.
Yeah. I think when we were talking before, you said that there's a certain amount of venting, which it's good to have a place to vent. People who understand what you're going through. And Larissa, do you want to just talk about what drew you to the group when you joined?
Well, it was this notion that there's a group of women who've got similar experiences, and as someone going through a divorce, you're coming across this challenge of somebody else telling you now what your motherhood looks like, and how do you express that? How do you figure that all out? And it's lonely, and it's really unsettling. It's like the rug's been pulled out from underneath you. So to have a group where you can go to, it just was so comforting. Finding out about the mothers group, I wasn't sure anymore if I could even do my art. I was, emotionally not in a very good place. And hearing these women's stories and sitting around and doing what my grandmother used to do with her friends, talk about the past, sit there, do some knitting or crocheting. For us, it was, art making too. And it was very, I'm going to get all emotional all of a sudden. It was a place, it was surprising for me. I did not expect to gain what I got out of the group in terms of my own personal development and strength and courage. And that was the one thing that kept me coming back. And we come in, the mothers do come in and we float in and come back. It's like these waves depending on what the kids are doing and what activities are doing and what COVID's doing,
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick off by looking at some of the works from the annual shows, and which have been going on since I think 2011. And I just want to say there is so much good work from these shows, and I wish we could have shown more. And so if we didn't get you in, I'm sorry. Please don't take it personally. We're showing wonderful work, but there's a lot more that we could have shown. So this, the first show, I think, Sandra, you said was called Nurture and Neglect. And I'll just read a bit from the statement. It explored what form nurture and neglect took on in people's lives. When you nurture one thing, you neglect another. Some mothers feel the tension between being a good mother and being a good artist. And all the works were square size. They were 12 by 12 because it's a domestic size that references quilting and scrapbooking, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, and I just love this work just because it uses dryer lint as an artistic.
I hear it. No. Yeah, well, this particular is by Jocelyn Chorney. We love Jocelyn. We miss you, Jocelyn. She's a writer and a poet, and her work often is about writing and words. And she's very playful and has a great sense of humor. And I just love this work because I love the expression on the woman's face. And like she's very scattered, like most mothers are, and just like, oh darn, I forgot to, you know, do whatever that important thing is. Like, right. So. Yeah. I don't know. It says a lot. Yeah. And just that, you know, there's sort of that scatteredness you always feel when you're trying to cover every base, when you're trying to make sure everything's tended to that can be tended to, all the fires you have to put out today, you know, so it's sort of, to me, it says a lot.
Yeah. Kind of gets pulled in different directions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's just look at the next work from the same show, I think. I love it's hard to see the details on this one, but you can see that it's kind of one of those, you know, calendars where mothers have, you know, dentist appointments and all the many things, the lists, the schedules. So yeah, tell us a bit about this work.
Well, I love this work too. Lisa Lysak, she submitted it to the first show, of course, but was this drawing is of a nursing mother, and I love that it's drawn on top of this crazy busy calendar. In the midst of everything else you have to do, you have to nurse. And it was based on when her sister was feeding her new baby, her oldest walked into the room and said, "Save some for me." And it made her realize there's always this long waiting list of people and things to nurture, you know, like even my cat would want to come and suck on my neck. I'm like, really? Like, really? Everything else I do? What am I, just a nurturing machine? But that is kind of how you feel, like, especially when they're babies. You know.
And, you know, one of the things this work raised for me that I've heard from artist mothers is they talk about, you know, there's the labor, the actual physical labor of motherhood, which is, you know, very time consuming and it can be very tiring. And then you try to find time to make art. And again, there's the physical labor of art, but there's also the kind of the preparation labor, the mental labor of letting ideas come and sit and change, and how that is really hard to combine with motherhood often, because there's always just like a million things kind of pressing in your brain and you can't really clear it for that. Like, find that? Larissa,
sure. And you learn to do things in smaller snippets of time. And like, I never learned how to manage time well until I had kids. And it's amazing what I can get done in an hour now that before kids, you know, it would take me a week. Like, you know, so it's, but like, I think for a lot of mothers, if you're creative, like, you can't stop this creative force. It's still there throughout your day. And so, you know, you just either make very small works in those small snippets of time, or you write down your ideas. Like, I'm now getting to ideas I've written down 15 years ago in sketchbooks, like, because I just couldn't get to them then, but it was, you know, so it's, I don't know. I think that's how your time shrinks. And so you work quicker, you become this expert multitasker. And I think, it's not this, like, I'm talking about that binary in the pram in the hallway, like, it's we have to create. If you're a creative person, you have to create or you'll go crazy. And I just remember one of our artists, Colleen Leduc, was on a road trip with her kids and was just going crazy that she couldn't be making work. So she made art out of the snack boxes in the car, like, as they were driving, like, just and brought it into the meeting, said, "This is what I made this one." Like, you know, she's so happy about expressing something, right?
Needs must, I guess, right? And what about you, Larissa? Like, how do you do the time, you know, work time?
I don't know, sort of, it takes priority for me. Like, the house may look crazy and a little chaotic, but out of chaos comes work and art. Right? So I think mothers have, you know, there's piles that you should get to, but that art one becomes, you know, when you have that free time, that art pile is like the first thing you go to. And you just make a point of pushing everything else aside, and the table becomes your studio space.
Right. Dining room table. Yeah. Okay, well, let's look at the next one. And this is from, and this is Sandra. And is this from Dailiness? Is that?
No, this is the nurture neglect again.
Oh, it's nurture neglect. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and show us the object.
I have it here. So it's based on a color wheel, and you spin it, and that's me in the middle, and it's basically all the things that I have to put my attention to. And when I'm putting my attention to something like my husband, that means I'm too tired, for community. I forgot my daughter. I'm not paying attention to money, my son, to art, to friends, to sleep. So it's kind of like choose what you want to focus on, and then look at all the other things you're neglecting. But it's really true for everything in life, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That whatever you focus on, you have to neglect other things, and it's this daily choice that you make. So it's you always feel torn, you always feel guilty, you always feel like you're always doing things halfway. So it's I don't know.
Yeah. Just spin that wheel.
The mental health component is so crucial, right? Like, to be able to sit back and go, oh, well, okay, this isn't happening right now, but that's okay because I'm doing this and I will get to it next. And the kids were great. Like, I remember my 2-year-old would sit and help me foil stained glass. And people would be like, oh, you're letting her handle glass? I'm like, yeah, the edges are beveled, and we'd watch TV and she'd sit there and like for hours at a time. Kira was amazing. And even, Christine, Cassandra, the same thing. They'd come right over and they'd want to be helping. So it did encourage that bonding and their creativity too, right? To know that they don't have to have a green tree and a white or blue sky, and you know what I mean? Like, they're very open-minded, and that's important for the kids to see that part of you, I think.
Yeah. So these activities aren't always separate. Like the way they interact is really valuable too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then dailiness. So we'll go on to the next slide, I guess. So that was one of the ones where some people it came out of that kind of challenge to try to do something every day, right? But it also looks at kind of the dailiness of motherhood, that the routines and the rituals and So it says mothering takes a lot of energy. This is from the kind of the show statement, and art making is often pushed aside. As a group, we assigned the challenge of making a sketch, poem, sculpture, photograph, or painting daily for a month. It enabled us to give daily time for our art and to develop our individual ideas in depth. And sometimes they worked like a sketch into a bigger piece by the time they got to the show, right? So, yeah, so this is also a really interesting show. Do you want to talk a bit about this one, Sandra?
Yeah, this was a really fun show where most people, most of the exhibits had like 30, or some of them had 30 pieces even, because they literally would try to do open air day for the month. So Katie McKelvey, this particular piece, she used old work punch clock cards for, I don't know if anybody remembers the punch clock, but still there. She had 30 of them, and she made art on all 30, and it kind of documented her month and so she's a mixed media artist. So it was just sort of this diary of different reflections she'd have every day in the month on those punch clock cards. And to me, it just sort of, I love it because it just shows just that labor involved, that invisible labor that mothers do, that you're working your ass off every day, but no one sees it. Like, and you're exhausted and you've done a lot, but you don't feel like you've accomplished anything. But everybody's alive, everybody's in bed, and I've accomplished something.
Yeah. You punch in the morning, but you never really get to punch out.
You don't get to punch out.
Yeah, that's great. A great work. I really liked it. Thought it was really witty. Okay, and let's look at the next one. Oh, yeah. So tell us a bit about this one.
So this is Rose Montgomery Witcher. Rose is a wonderful drawer, and she's very disciplined artist who really works hard at a daily practice. And so she has 2 very artistic children. And so this is about her son, when he was practicing his violin, she would sit and sketch, and they would kind of do that daily practice together, and it made them make each other stay longer and work at it longer. And so she would sketch each of her children's stuffy animals, because she knew one day they're going to be, packed away, and this isn't going to be part of their lives anymore. So she wanted to create this memory of their childhood favorite stuffed animals. So,
oh yeah, it's just a beautiful drawing, and it reminds you like that. Some people might call these inanimate objects, but for the children, they're not inanimate. They're living creatures, really.
Oh yeah, yeah,
really
very
important. That I think.
Yeah.
And as mothers, we're always recording stuff and feel like we're not recording enough. The first walk, step, the first talk, word. You think you're going to remember those things, but sadly, you do not. And I wish. To think, oh, if I'd have done that in a daily art form, I'd been so much further ahead right now. But it's just something natural for Rose to think about doing in that respect. So that comes from the mother, as an artist insight, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's check. Oh yeah, and this is a great piece too. So this was the show was I think it was called Winter Mothering.
Yes, Winter Mothering. So this piece is by Yvette Cenarini. She does beautiful photo montage digital art, and it's very playful and humorous. And so this was, she lives in St. Boniface. She's a Franklin, Manitoba, and then she made friends with some new French-speaking African immigrants to Canada. And so she was just observing like how stoic they are to come from their climate into this crazy climate, and just to see like all this stuff you need that you don't need in Africa. So I find it just so humorous, standing at the bus stop with all your gear, like just,
Those days where it just takes 20 minutes just to get out of the door. And then if you have the stroller, it's hard to push through the snow. But if you have the sled, you can't drag it anywhere else. So it says, oh yeah.
No, the equipment you need, right? And yeah.
Oh no, it's a really good piece.
Yeah.
And let's look at. Oh, we have a question. How do you respond to the far too often suggestion that mother's art is not art but craft? and that's sometimes raised as.
I think the reality nowadays is art and craft are so enmeshed in each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To think otherwise is not being realistic anymore. And because there's so many different ways of using medium, recycled, upcycled, the way we look at materials now is so much different than before. And, the crossing of craft with art in terms of what people use and why they use it. So I think at this point, 21st century, I don't think I just tell people there's no difference. Like, if you're trying to find those components and put everything into a little institutionalized box, then I don't think we're thinking the way we need to think moving forward.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I love how like in the art world, we keep breaking the rules. Just break those rules. Like even that pram in the doorway, that was stupid. This is an experience. Like, no, really, because it's an excuse in a way, isn't it? Like when you think about, right? Because you think about, okay, that pram in the doorway is somebody's experience. That's that mother's experience and that child's experience. So is that not valuable to express? And if art sort of, it helps create meaning in the world and helps create even wisdom and education and understanding in the world. Don't you want to hear from 52% of the planet? I do. I want to hear from everybody who has something to say. So I think we just break these old rules. And I don't know. I love that about the art world, that they're continually breaking the rules. And the craft art thing is hey, anything you can make art out of anything. It doesn't matter. And I think the craft thing also almost was sort of ghettoized as a female sort of thing, and it's almost it's sexist really. So let's call out the craft stuff and mesh it into this art world. That's what I
And
think.
actually, this question is perfect right now because of the next work we're going to look at.
Yes.
It's so witty and as actually dealing with that exact same question. So it's cotton yarn and I guess, oh, I'm terrible at needlework, but some form of knitting, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's yeah.
But it's PhD, which is incredibly clever, but it's those, it's like colors that you associate with baby, blankets and baby sweaters and it even kind of looks like those Fisher-Price alphabet blocks that I remember from my so yeah, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. That's Melanie Sandra, and Melanie's a writer and a poet. And at the time, I absolutely love this piece. It's had a long life, and I'll tell you a bit about it. She, was knitting together her thoughts of her academic ambitions and her domestic life, and was really trying. At the time she made it, was contemplating: should I do a PhD? Should I have another child? What should I do with my life? And so, when she didn't know what to do, and just to stress, she would knit. And so she essentially knitted, I guess, a goal, I guess. I think maybe it's like a little vision board, Melanie. And the interesting thing was that she did start her PhD and then used those washcloths throughout the period of her PhD studies. And so 6 years later, she put them in a show again, and they were all worn and everything. But she said, in the end, they're tired, worn, but sturdy. So it just sort of tracked her life through her academic pursuit, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, you could say the same for a lot of us.
Yeah.
I'm so tired, worn, but sturdy.
Sure.
Okay, and then the next show that we're going to look at is What's for Supper. And I'll just read a bit from the statement of that show, because it's a great statement. This ain't the 1950s, but moms still carry a lot of responsibility for food, from bag lunches to bake sales, family dinners to TV dinners, coupon clipping to foodie blogs, comfort foods to soul foods, and the breast or bottle debate to Happy Meal shame. Food is often how we are judged as good or bad mothers. It's also a way to show love and to nurture, to pass on family traditions, to bring people together. So this was a show that had a lot of the sweet and the sour.
Yes, it did.
And people ambivalent attitudes to cooking and food.
Yes. Yeah, I want to add too that all those great artist statements were written by Melanie, or PhD artists.
Oh, there you go. No.
Awesome to have a writer in the group. Oh, such a god. Yeah. So this next one is Brenna George, who's an absolutely beautiful painter. She was so this whole show was about just food and all the politics, all the life that revolves around food, and how much we handle food in a day as a mother. And so her painting was just this honest depiction of her experience with financial struggles. So this is called No Money for Supper.
Yeah
It's a very powerful piece, and really represented a lot of people's experience. So
when it comes down to, I think it's a really good example of that whole economic, especially as a single mother, challenge that you face, right? Because you're still expected to put food on the table. You may or may not be getting child support. You may be paying child support to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And still, if you're at the top of the, when it comes to the pay structure, if you look at what minimum wage is, or what you were making as a couple, and divide that in half, it becomes almost a quarter of what you really have to work with. I remember being criticized for KD and as a dinner. Like it's everybody has to do and make it work the way they can. And the idea that it's not right to judge somebody because you don't know their full story. And that's one thing about the group, is we're very open and accommodating and understanding and encouraging everybody about, no matter what you're going through, like, don't feel like that's wrong or it makes you less of a person.
Right. Yeah. Good point. And then another show was Order Disorder,
Caroline's piece. It's great.
which is wonderful. Again, about that kind of, you kind of trying to find that balance often, both as a mother and as an artist, I guess. And this is such a great work, because there's so many socks when you're a mother, so many socks. And always without a pair, like it's just like one.
I know.
Where did the other one go? But it's so visually clever, that you have like the order of art, and you can even see kind of how it starts off very organized at the bottom of the frame, and then it kind of, and then it's spilling out into the disorder of domesticity, which I just love.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect depiction of the chaos that can be your life every day. And this is done by Carolina Aranita, who really is a photographer. That's her main sort of passion, but she's branching off into more really inventive, sculptural things. And so I think this piece is hilarious because it's sort of depicts that universal war with the lost sock, or the trying to match your socks, or trying to find socks, or my kid who still to this day steals my socks. Like, just so I don't know. It really it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
No, it's great work. And then the next fractured portrayals of motherhood. And that was, this really strikes me as a very interesting theme, like the exploring the fracture, the fragmentation, the imperfection that is inherent in the art of mothering and motherhood. The statement says, these works delve into the experiences between the socially imposed images of the celebrated and the censured mother. Because I think, and it might even be getting worse with social media, that you're bombarded with all these images of perfection and these really high expectations, and there can be a tremendous amount of guilt for not living up to them.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I think there's this expectation too that having a baby brings wholeness into your life and completes you and makes you feel purposeful and all these things. And I think this particular piece by Adele Rewerts, she was, it's kind of about, she calls it Who Am I Now? And it was about those expectations of wholeness and feeling connected. And she said, really now I just feel unsure and lost, and I'm not sure who I am now. Because I guess her identity becomes, fractured. I think that can happen. Just because it's such a huge, sort of alteration to your life. Like if you're, young and child-free, and then all of a sudden you have a newborn, it's so overwhelming. I don't think in our culture we understand what's coming. We have no idea, because that's why I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think there's enough work about the honest experience of it. And I think we need more images and iconography to kind of that actually that shows you what it looks like to do this hardest job in the world, because then you know what you're getting into. And so there isn't just that good, bad mother binary. It's complex, it's multi-layered, it's just like humans are. So
well,
sorry, Larissa. Yeah.
The other thing that happens too, like in my case, we're more mobile now, right? So you don't grow up in a community where your mother is and your grandparents are. Sometimes you get married and you move away, and then you're left to be the only person. And like Sandra said, nobody gives you a handbook when this child's born. So there's that invisibility, like you said, Sandra, of how do I go forward with this? It's like a secret society that nobody really told me about. And if you watch nowadays, it's all about you can do it all, you can have it all. But then, that balance is really hard to find. And the guilt of mothering comes into play too. So, economically, if you're not working, or, do you be a stay-at-home mom? Even with the drawing aspect of COVID, like, Sandra was saying about the group meeting once a month, because we couldn't meet last year with COVID. A lot of the moms, some people were just thriving with the ability to be able to focus on their art because they weren't working as much, let's say. But then there's the other moms that ended up, now they're homeschooling. So, there's that feeling again of not being able to produce my art. And, all these sort of arrows come at you and you're always kind of dodging them, trying to juggle and at the same time stay stable in a mind state too, right? So it's important because we can express those emotions in our work.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, this work, she's obviously dealing with some very difficult emotions, but it's such a beautiful work. I mean, the abstraction, color is powerful. So,
and Mars too, I find are almost hypnotic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what's next. Oh, back to the mothership. So tell us a bit about this show, Sandra, and this is your work too. So tell us about this particular work.
Well, this show was Melanie, our PhD artist, who really loved that word, the mothership, and just how it's used, and thought it was really playful, and thought wouldn't it be fun to just do a show based on that word, and you can interpret it in many ways. So it can be interpreted like, mother as a vessel, or as sort of a UFO of unidentified labor, however she wrote it. It could be like Earth. It could be a title like your lordship, your ladyship, your mothership, which mothers deserve. I think that kind of aristocratic title. It could be a nest. And she said, and flying saucers, literally, there could be flying saucers in your life. So I guess I took this title kind of literally. I mean, I always love hot air balloons. I love the hot air balloon festival. I just think they're so magical and fun. And I was just thinking about mothers, we're all vessels that have brought forth the human race and throughout time. And so I just got this thinking about vessels. And then I started looking at old anatomical drawings from the Renaissance. And so I drew them on these airships. And so I did Da Vinci's drawing of a baby in the womb. I drew an old drawing of a woman giving birth. One of the balloons represents two breasts, and all the babies are sitting in a little muffin tin. So I don't know, and it was just kind of about it's just about honoring mothers and just mothers of humanity, their work, their love, their sacrifice over all of time, on the planet. So
that was a great show, though. Too.
Yeah, fun when everybody had fun with that word,
Yeah, because you put out an idea for these shows, but people can respond to it in all sorts of different ways, and often do, right?
Yeah, that's the beauty of art. Hey? Give any kind of theme, right? Any kind of theme as an assignment, you'll get so many different responses to it. I love that about art.
Right. What were you going to say, Larissa?
Sorry, I was just saying that they're so authentic because they're so personal, the work that comes out. And it's very intuitive too, because you look at something and you're like, oh my gosh, I never thought of myself as two breasts with kids in a can. Like, just like, like this, you get these little antidotes that really kind of put a smile on your face and go, that's so great. I feel good about what I do,
Yeah. Okay, and we'll look at the next work, and then there's a question that I will get to after we look at that one. So, and this is you, Larissa, so take it away.
So Lilith is based on a story in the Bible that actually Adam had another wife, and she was banned because she wouldn't follow the rules, basically. But in history, it kind of came across as her being a monster, and she would come and steal children away. But based on my personal experiences with my divorce and losing custody of my girls, I saw Lilith more as a protector of these children. And the idea that we have to be our own goddess and our own Lilith to be able to take on not just, the people in our lives that become other, but the institutions that are there that are supposed to be protecting us as well. And her wings are out. There's a phallic form at her back, kind of thumbing her, as putting pressure on her. And she's refusing to budge. She's not going anywhere. So you can see the mother and father and the idea of Mary and Joseph and the child in the one corner, and where that all began, and having the faith and the strength to be able to withstand all that negativity that can tear you apart.
And the question I've got is, do you feel that all of the art you make centers around mothering? Or do you work in other, with other ideas and with other themes?
Well, I think like every individual artist, they also work in other themes as well. But for our Mother's Group, we always wanted to make, very purposely make work about the experience of mothering, just to help raise the status of women and mothers, and just to kind of put out that, that education about what that reality really is. So that became really important to us. So for our group in particular, that's what our shows are about. But each individual artist also, of course, makes art in all kinds of other themes and everything. So,
okay. And what would you say, Larissa, about your practice?
I would agree. I think the one advantage to having like a collective or a community is you can rely on those people for input into an idea that maybe you don't really know how to express. But a lot of our members are specialists in other areas, like digital graphic designers, landscape architect, as in Jocelyn's case, So, and I think those other skill sets that we have, we do bring forward, sometimes without even realizing it. And also it feeds, the other side as well in terms of our practice.
Okay, great. Okay, and now we're going to look at, we'll get Larissa to talk a bit about, there was supposed to be a show last year that was canceled, and because of COVID, and then moving forward, you organized for this weekend, but I mean, obviously there's been all sorts of things happening. So do you want to talk about the challenges of, organizing a show during the pandemic, and what this show has been about, and how it's kind of, and how people can see it? Because even if you can't see it in person, there are other ways. So.
Right. So we're very fortunate when you think about the time we're in, because social media is a really good platform for alternatives. And, with COVID last year, so last year would have been the 10th anniversary of the organization that Sandra founded with MAWA. And, we were going to do something then. And unfortunately, it happened that Sandra, we just kind of talked about it and like, what are we going to do? Well, we can't go forward. This shows. So we kind of put everything on the back burner. And then, again, with COVID in school, a lot of the mothers, had to focus on the family this fall. So we weren't doing our monthly meetings. And touching base again in January, we all decided that, no, we want to do a show again. So the idea was we would do it. We usually do it in May because of Mother's Day. And we prepared a plan B, which would be that if we were canceled, or, depending on the economic or the environmental circumstances, we could turn around and maybe go virtual. So we have formulated an Instagram page. So it's Artist Mothers at MAWA, and started that last week. And we used Sherry's image here, Lucky Bums, which is a photograph of her family, grandmother and mother, and maybe friends or relatives. And they're looking for 4-leaf clovers. So that kind of speaks to where we're at. We want this 4-leaf clover to kind of give us reprieve from this epidemic or pandemic we're in. And I had everybody gather up the work that they had submitted to Sandra last year. So we prepared with artist statements, and I got all the digital images, and that's how we started it. So we're using the talk tonight to kick off the Instagram platform.
Great. Great. Okay, and do you want to talk a bit about the theme, and then let's also look at a couple of the works. And again, we could have looked at, dozens of works, but we'll look at two. So
Yeah, currently we've got, I think at this point now, 30 artists. So everybody's going to be putting in 2 works, and we'll roll them out every 2 days. So the theme for this year's show is Earth's Mother. And again, everybody can interpret that however they see, it affects them or what's important to them. Sorry, I'm just, we're going to have it on Facebook as well. So the MAWA Mothers Facebook page. Okay. So there's an album with the image and that Alice designed as the book cover. And then we'll be introducing each artist daily with their artist bio and then images of their work. So the theme this year, it's amazing. Like, I've seen literal forms. I've seen one of the pieces we're going to be seeing. They both speak to everything that we've been talking about so far. So
can we see the next image? Just a lovely, tender work.
Yeah, so this is a work by Nellie Zastra, and she's a Winnipeg artist who's done some community-based artwork, and she takes commissions for drawings and things as well. This is a piece she's done this year, and what she did is ask mothers to submit images to her as part of a project she was doing herself, and then she's making drawings off of those images. So Lonnie is a self-educated artist, social justice and mental health advocate, and survivor and mother living with a disability. Through the use of pen and ink and paper, Zastra explores themes of motherhood from a diverse perspective. So again, you can, like, the drawing itself is about 14, I think it was, 14 by, sorry, I didn't see what the number was, but it's substantial in size. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful work. I mean, it really captures the physical intimacy, of motherhood, and it's lovely. Mm-hmm. And let's see the next one.
So these are mucklucks by Michelle Prachette, and she's a Winnipeg artist as well. And what she's done here is she's used the imagery of the beads as a map. So the mucklucks were made to honor her paternal family ancestors and mothers. So she sees them, she has a picture too of them in the snow. So the idea that they would be nestled with it on the earth in the snow. And the imagery traces their path from the early 1700s Albany, New York to the mid 1700s I'm not going to say this word well, Michilimackinac Island to Wisconsin, and then up to the Red River to Pembina, and further north to 1812. And they settled around the Red River and in Saskatchewan.
Beautiful. And the depiction of the plants and seeds is really beautiful too.
Yeah, she did a really wonderful job on these.
Okay, well, I guess that brings us up to right now. And this show is underway as we speak. And so I just want to thank you for sharing all this wonderful work with us, and sharing what you've been doing for over 10 years. And are there any other questions? I don't see any. Oh. And please just say one more time, Larissa, where people can check out the show online.
So on Instagram, you can follow us at Artist Mothers, or the @ sign. So Artist Mothers, the word at, A-T, and then MAWA, M-A-W-A. And our Facebook page is Artist Mothers at MAWA as well.
Okay. Well, I hope everyone, after seeing some of this terrific work, will seek out this show, and because it's important to come together and appreciate art and and artists and what's happening right now, even under these really difficult times. So thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Thanks, Larissa. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks for having us, Allison. Take care.
Amazing.